we were lying in our tent and about to sleep. And then Richard says to me, "Can you be my dad?" My heart sank. I just felt like, yeah.
You're listening to the Soul Podcast.
A special thanks to our friends over at Stanford Shaw for sponsoring this video.
Cheers, Daddy-o.
Cheers!
Cheers. We've been trying to get to this for a while now. No? I think this idea came to you a couple of years back.
Yeah, but here we are. Yeah.
Ganda naman ng outfit natin. Parang, may meeting ba tayo mamaya? Or what's going
I'm
on?
trying to look corporate here, pero naka rubber shoes naman ako eh.
So, guys, welcome to the Soul Podcast. This is where we talk all things that feed the soul. And today, or for the next couple episodes, we'll be talking about all things fathers and son. As you can see, I have my dad over here, Audie Gemora, if you don't already know him. Theater actor, singer, and ano pa ba? And a great father.
Aw.
Intro ko naman para...
Well, I've always said that I have lived a very full life. I'm 66, lived a super full life, but the last, how would I say, 25 years have been marvelous because of this young man here. Because God gave me the opportunity to be a father, and it's something I never expected would happen, and it happened. And so it's really God, because if you didn't plan it, didn't do anything about it, and it happened, then it must be God, right? There's a line in Joseph the Dreamer. It must be God.
And the opportunity that he's talking about, I think, is a little different than most. This isn't the conventional setup. For a lot of people who don't know, I'm actually Audie's adopted son. If you can't already tell with the difference in looks, we have Mr. Audie who's light skinned and dapper, and we have me who's moreno and sexy. So it's, the looks are different, but he is my dad, always has been. I know that from the bottom of my heart. And we're just here to share our story, and hopefully it speaks to you.
Well, I mean, maybe it would be good to tell you how it happened, like how this thing happened. For those of you who don't know me, I don't assume everybody knows me, but I've been in the theater all of my life. I was one of the founders of the country's first professional theater company called Christian theater company called Trumpets. And I was running that for the longest time. Trumpets has this parang workshop in the summer called Play Shop. Now, Richard's aunt, Suzanne, was working in Play Shop. So she was part of the staff, so she was always where Trumpets activities were. So in one of the productions, this was at the Morocco Theater. I believe it was Little Mermaid. For those who aren't familiar with how shows are run in Morocco, there's a big lobby there, and then there are sofas to the side, and then there's a big bar where people buy food. As a producer, I always make sure that the audience goes in. So nung pumasok na yung audience and they were enjoying the first act, I was just standing around the lobby, and there are these tall steps going down to this place where people hang out during intermission. And I was standing there, and then this cutest maybe 2.5-year-old kid approaches me from underneath, and he's looking at me with these big soulful eyes. And I said, "Ooh, whose kid are you?" Suzanne comes scuttling, and then she grabs him and says, "Oh, yeah, ano ko to, pamangkin ko, Sir Audie." Sabi ko, okay, he's so cute. And then my good friend, David Cosico, talent manager par excellence and always discovers talent. He loves kids. And David was there. And I knew that David loves kids. So I said, "David, look at Suzanne's pamangkin. Ang cute, oh." And then David just immediately, he has a way with kids. And he just went to Richard and started talking to him, even though Richard wasn't even talking. And then may mga sofas aside. And at one point, so I just, my attention was drawn to something else. And maya, nung tumingin ako, nakaupo si Richard sa sopa, nagdadangle ang kanyang feet kasi he was so small, nakadangle lang ganyan. This small kid.
Paano?
Like this, exactly. Nagdedede siya, ganyan.
Theater actor, everybody.
And then what David did, just so that he can, play with Richard, he goes to Richard's side, and then he pretends to put his head on Richard's little lap. And then he goes to Richard as if to ask for the dede. And Richard gives it. So David takes now the dede and pretends to be drinking from the dede. Of course, he didn't make subo the chupon. And then he took Richard's hand. So this is David's head. This is Richard sitting. He took Richard's little hand and he made Richard make the pick his forehead while he's making dede. And before I knew it, I was looking. Here's this little kid going like that with David making dede. So I just thought he was the cutest kid. And then from that point on, I don't know, David just created this relationship with Richard so that I don't know what happened. He started to like get Richard often and he would bring Richard to trumpets.
Yeah, I was on all the rehearsals.
We were in Shangri-La. I mean, our
Office
offices were in
days.
Shangri-La, our offices, and we had a small theater in Shangri-La. And Richard was always became a fixture. I mean, David would always carry him around. He was always in some kind of costume. Spider-Man costume, Superman costume. Parati siyang dinadala ni David. And David would often call him almost every day. And they would talk on the phone. And he could barely talk. You know,
I can't imagine what kind of
do you even
conversations.
remember?
No.
He would just ask you, what did you eat today? And you'll just make sagot, right? Your famous, until now he says it to you, wow, Jewish.
Yeah.
Because wow, Jewish. Because one day David bought him juice and he said, wow, Jewish. So I mean, Richard just became our trumpets baby. I remember one time we had a Christmas party and everybody was in costume. And David came down with a small bike. And you were like,
Oh my gosh,
you
yeah.
were clapping and you were so happy. But he was the trumpets baby. He became the trumpets baby. We would see him all the time. Ako naman, wala naman akong desire to be, okay, cute kid. That's it. No big deal. Eh, may nangyari. All of a sudden, David, who became like the surrogate father, one day had kind of like a personal crisis. David, sorry, but all of a sudden
It
he
was an
says,
emergency. He
he
had
says,
to-
I'm going to leave for New York.
Yeah. And he was there for a couple years.
And
too,
like,
you know.
what?
Yeah.
But David, how about Richard? Kawaman naman yung bata. Wala na yung tatay. Ikaw na yung tatay. Tapos iiwanan mo. So sabi niya, I can't. I have to go. So I was so burdened by this. And so I said, give me na nga the phone number. Kasi landline pa ata yun eh.
Yeah.
Landline. I don't know what got into me, but I started calling and I would start like, Richard, how are you? What did you eat today? I ate
And this guy does not know how to talk to babies. He's like, he'll hold them for a while and he's like, okay, I don't know what to do with it.
Okay, I have recordings of those because I recorded it.
Hey, Audie. Hello? You give me a call when you get back. I love you. Bye.
So this is where I'm between 2.5 to 3 years old. Nung naging 3 years old siya, David messaged me and said, Odds, I have a gift for Richard. And, can you reach out for that? It's that one. This is it.
Thank you, Burns.
Buzz Lightyear. So I go to a park in Capitolio where they were throwing you a party.
Yeah.
Malayo pa lang si Richard, this 3-year-old. Malayo pa lang. And we had just been talking on the phone. I've never picked him up or just phone lang lahat. Malayo pa lang si Richard. Sumigaw na ng, Tito Adi! Running to me and hugs my leg. And I said, oh no. I think I love this kid now. I think I love this kid.
Buzz Lightyear. So anyone gets to visit my man cave, you'll wonder why there's a lot of Buzz Lightyear there. It's because it's a special character, one that I associate with our relationship.
From that point on, I spoiled him like nobody's business. Parating,
Spoil is a strong word.
haha.
You know.
Every Happy Meal, every Jollibee thing, we would be there kung may mga, di ba, when you were kids, you had promos. So we
Happy
were
Meals. In your
constantly
mind,
eating Jollibee or McDonald's. By the way, in case you want to come in and sponsor, because I was like he wanted toys all the time, and I was getting him toys all the time, and
One of my favorite pictures is you and I in Jollibee. I think you were feeding me
making you
spaghetti or
sugo.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how the relationship slowly built. And then I started to go to his house and I would just sit there or bring him to a toy store.
Yeah. The mall, eating food court,
Yeah.
roam around the toy store 2 or 3 hours, trying to get him to buy me something.
And he always succeeded. And his way of saying it is, what's this? Para humingi na ng toy. What's this? And,
Yeah. And my takeaway from it was, I guess
do you
I was
remember?
I was cute since I was 2. That's that's that's
he was always a charmer. He's always been a charmer. He still is a charmer. And he just has a way of making people like him. He's very likable as a child. And he wasn't that kind of kid that would have tantrums. Never ko ever narinig si Richard na umiiyak. I don't think I would have been able to handle anybody with a tantrum, but he would just sulk if he didn't get something. and that was it.
What was that? What was that moment you think that kind of crystallized the father and son relationship? Because up until a certain age, it was Tito Audie, right?
Yeah.
But we'd hang out all the time. He'd bring me out
Yeah.
after school, and then we'd chill. But what was that moment where
A very specific moment. So our church, our home church at the time, Victory, has had this. I don't know if it's still going, but they have this wonderful program called Me and My Dad Camp,
Yeah.
where fathers take their children to this camp, both sons and daughters. And his mom, Shelo, who at that time had already accepted that I was gonna that I'm part of the family somehow because I was always in their house, said she calls me Tito Odds. So she said, Tito Odds, can you take Richard to me and my dad camp? I said, yeah, sure. So we went, and I had never been to a camp. I had never played this kind of typical father, that sets up the tent. So I had to research. I had to buy a tent. I had to find a place na lulutuan mo ng
Yeah,
hotdog.
those portable stoves.
And when we finally arrived at me and my dad camp, I pitched the tent and everything, and then I was cooking the hot dog. And
Vienna sausage, I remember very
Yeah.
vividly. Yeah.
then there's Pastor Paulo Ponsalan. He says, Audie, why are you come here? There's adobo. Pala, the wives were just making, the wives
bring
would
food.
come in, bring all
Yeah.
the food. They had been doing it so many times already. They were cheating na, and here we were trying to. But we did wonderful things like fly the kite and everything, and
Yeah.
hang out with other dads.
There were
and then
games.
There were games.
Yeah.
And so it was a wonderful bonding moment. And that night, we were done with everything. We were lying in our tent and about to sleep. And then Richard says to me, Tito Odds, can you be my dad? And I'm like, like my heart sank. It's like parang gumanon lang siya. And I just felt like, yeah, 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 yeah. So the one who initiated this relationship, formalized this relationship, was this kid who at age 5 knew what he needed and asked for it. May iyak ako.
I actually have a little something to commemorate. it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
These were the IDs we had.
Yeah.
Me and my dad camp. So this was always like something interesting for people who went to the house. Like, what's that? Because syempre, simple lang, right? But see, it says here this was a 2006. We were part of the Black Panthers team.
Soon after that, he was already of age to go to school. So I told Jello, I'm gonna put him to school. I'll take it on. So I remember the very first day we took you to school on the second floor of BCIS.
Yes.
Nakapila kayong mga estudyante doon, and I remember very distinctly the kids were saying, because I was the only father there, I was the only adult there because I dropped him, and I remember one of the kids, maybe Gab Sandicon, said, "Who's that?" And you know what? Richard turns to me like he didn't know how to answer it. He turns to me. He didn't know how to answer. He turns to me and like, can I tell them? And he says, he's my dad. And I said, yeah, I'm his dad. I'm his dad. And when he heard that, parang he just got like a boost of affirmation and confidence. And he's like, yeah, that's my dad. And they proudly walked into the room in the line, So I said, oh my God, this is what he needed, right?
Yeah.
So from that point on, I became a full-time dad. I was just like
Full time.
Full-time. I would be
Dropping
there.
me off.
I would
waiting for
drop
me.
him, and then I would wait, and kasi prep pa lang to eh. So
Yeah.
how many hours lang? And then when he's done, I would get him.
Jollibee in Pioneer Center. Do you remember?
Yeah, all the time. So in fact, I remember one teacher even making a comment. Sabi niya, Audie, my God, sabi niya, you're the only parent, you're only father who ever shows up here and stays here all day long. While this was happening, I left trumpets that I had taken care of for 15 years already. And I felt like, okay, kung anak ko ang trumpets, 15 years old na siya, pwede na siyang iwanan. But here's this new kid now, and it just gave me all that time free time to raise you.
Did you feel like you were ready? Because obviously you didn't expect it. No, like it wasn't a planned thing.
Well, I guess because it happened so slowly over the course of time, there were no expectations. It's not like, can you be the surrogate father? And I'm like, huh? If that was presented that way, then it might have might have jolted me, but because it just evolved, um, then it was so natural. The relationship just crystallized over time.
So was it something like you just realized as you were, as you were fathering that, oh my God, I'm doing dad things out of nowhere, things I didn't really prepare for.
Here's the funny thing. So, hindi ba Tito David left for New York?
Yeah.
Okay. Bumalik si David sa New York, and I remember it was in your Tita Sane's condo.
Mm.
And we're seated around the table, the adults. And I remember you were walking around, moving around, and your stupid Tito Carlo goes, Richard, who do you love the most? Me, Tito David, or Tito Audie?
Who's your favorite tito?
I was your favorite
Who's your
tito.
favorite tito?
And Richard just went behind me and clutched onto me, and so parang- so that's when I kind of realized, okay, this is already a full-time commitment. I'm gonna fully commit to you, and we would spend the whole day out. Every time I would bring you home, I knew you were sad. I
Yeah.
knew that you didn't want to separate because they lived in this house in Capitolio, Pasig, where ang taas-taas ng steps. So you drop him off, and then he would have to climb the steps to go all the way to the top of where his house is. And every time I would drop him off, at one point, I noticed he wouldn't say goodbye. He would just turn around and go up. So sabi ko, malungkot tong bata na to. So that's when I decided in my head, I'm gonna take this kid and have him live with me at one point. I just don't know when it's gonna happen. So that was another defining
That was.
moment. Na sabi ko, one day we're gonna live together. And
Yeah, he took me to this village,
Yeah.
and we played in the park first,
Oh,
and then he said, "I want to show you the house where I grew up, or where I stayed in my teen years." So we were playing, I think, across the house. I didn't know which one it was back then, but you were taking a video, and I was just playing with a fire hydrant. As kids are, they're curious about things.
Inside over here.
That's a hydrant.
What's inside over
A hydrant has water in case there's a fire.
And then he starts to take a video, and then he goes, "Look at that house behind you. Yeah, look at that. So big, right? So nice. We're gonna live there one day."
That's where we're gonna live.
Yeah. This down that I'm gonna live in now when I'm 8 years old.
Okay, let's show it.
Here.
You like that house?
Yep. I really like that kind of house.
By the time I turned 9, he took the whole family in, not just me, but he took my sisters and my mama. Dad's whole thing was, I'm not here to take away my son just so I can father him. No, like the picture you have in your head about a family is a mother, father, and then the kids. I'm here not to take him away, but I'm here to complete the circle. As unconventional as it may seem, that's what he did, and from then, we've lived with him ever since, and we've played father and son ever since.
Ang una kasi nangyari is there was an assignment in his school that he had to create a painting or a picture of family.
Yeah.
So he painted, and it was Lola, mom, 2 sisters. Walang tatay. So I said, okay, I know what's missing. It's the father, and I'm never gonna take him away from this family that he identifies as family. I will just fill the void.
Yeah.
So never in my mind did I think if I ever adopted this kid, I would just take him away. No, I mean, it was clear to me that I needed to fill this family unit. And that's why the initiative to take your whole family with me when I finally decided to move to our old house in Das Marinas. Now, how did the adoption happen?
The legal adoption.
Legal
Yeah,
adoption
legal
happened
adoption.
because it was still parang an informal setup, and I have to
Yeah.
hand it to your mom, right? I mean, here's a stranger who she barely knows, who
Yeah.
just all of a sudden moved into their lives.
We're not related to in
Yeah.
any way, other than the fact that my aunt was working
Yeah.
for the ministry.
And here I am all of a sudden I'm like a surrogate father to her son, and all of a sudden I'm telling her, I want you to move in with me.
Yeah.
And it took her a while.
No, that must have been tough for
Yeah.
Mama.
Yeah, it was tough, but I think like Miss Saigon, she realized I need to sacrifice my life for my son, and so she bravely said, it took a while, but bravely said, okay, I will go. So they agreed. She agreed to take the kids to live with me in Dasma. It was so funny the setup. Kasi at first sabi niya, oh sige, weekends lang kami, Tito Odds. Okay, so
Yeah.
the house had a swimming pool and everything, and so they would live in Pasig with the lola weekdays. Pagdating ng Friday, pasusundo ko na sila. Nasa ano pa lang, nasa garahe pa lang, nagtatanggalan na sila si Richard, si Hannes,
Yeah.
si CJ, nagtatanggalan na ng damit, dire-diretso sa
It's like
swimming
there's
pool.
a swimming pool.
So it started like, okay, weekends lang sila, and then they would go back to Pasig kasi andun din naman ang Victory.
Yeah, yeah.
And then maya-maya, nag-switch na. Weekends lang sila sa lola, weekdays na sila sa akin.
Yeah.
And as you grow older, you didn't even want to go back to Pasig anymore. So you can-
Yeah, it's just visiting now for Lola, but
full-time na sila. So it was a process.
It
Now,
was a process.
what drove us to formalize this relationship? Okay. I got sick at one point. I had a cancer scare. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, but they got it very early on, so that's nothing to be worried about. But at that time, it got me to thinking, if anything happens to me, what happens to him, right? So I consulted with a Christian lawyer, asked, how can I secure my son, right? And I still called him my son, hindi pa kami adopted.
Yeah.
And sabi niya, well, Audie, you can do a will. So we went through the motion. I recorded had a will. Your Lola and your mom were witness, and then I recorded it because it was recorded and it was also written.
Yeah.
And then he said to me, Audie, ang problema lang, you're not married, you don't have kids, you have siblings. So it's not foolproof. Even if you have a will, it can still be contested. So sabi ko, so what do I do? Sabi niya, well, kahit ipagsigaw mo pa sa buong mundo na anak mo to, kung walang papeles, the state will never recognize it. So sabi ko, what are you saying? Sabi niya, then you really have to adopt them. So I, again, turned to your mom and I said, what do you think? And she said, she'll think about it, pray about it. And again, it was a long process. And then she finally agreed. And even your biological father agreed.
Yeah. It was hard for the both of them.
Yeah, it was hard for the both of them, but they both agreed. And so we started the process of adoption. Went to a really good Christian lawyer, si Win Salombides. The first judge that we brought this adoption case to was very hostile. I don't know what was up her, you know what, but she was just really hostile.
This is a Dross podcast. You should
Just
know
keeping
that.
it real here, okay? She kept badgering your mom.
Yeah.
She kept badgering your mom na, adoption to eh. Eh kung adoption to, ba't nandiyan ka pa rin sa bahay ni Mr. Gemora? Dapat i-give up mo siya, ganyan. And your mom, of course, was so accosted by this thing, right?
Yeah.
She couldn't defend herself. And then she kept bullying your mom. She would say things like, oh, may dalawa ka pang anak. Ano kung kukunin ni Mr. Gemora lahat ng anak mo? Anong mararamdaman mo? Siyempre, your mom was like,
Yeah.
flustered.
Yeah.
Papayag ka ba na kukunin ng anak mo? Hindi mo na makikita yan. And then your mom said no.
Yeah, because by law, it's a complete giving up of the child. I think
Right.
they didn't quite recognize that we're trying to complete a family
She
circle.
didn't understand that.
No.
She did not understand
And
that.
the judge, I think, was in protection of you, I feel. Because
Either protection of me or protecting your mom.
Yeah.
Because really, I mean,
Either
she
or.
maybe, I don't know what she was at. I don't know what she was getting at, but she was
Yeah.
hostile. It was so bad that even the prosecutor side said to my lawyer, inhibit mo yan, hostile yan. So my lawyer inhibited her, which
Yeah.
means, we declared that she was hostile, and so the case was re-raffled to a second judge.
Yeah.
And this second judge, it sat there for like 5-6 years. Nothing was happening.
I was in my teen years at
You're
this
already
time.
slowly getting into your
Yeah.
teen
And the
years.
maximum was 18 years old.
18. You can
Couldn't
only
be
be
adopted,
adopted till
yeah.
you're 18. And he was around, this is around about mga ano na siya, siguro mga 16.
Yeah, roundabouts.
And then one day, my lawyer calls me up and says, Audie, the second judge dropped the case. I said, what do you mean he dropped the case? I mean, he just felt like he couldn't be in charge of it. So he re-raffled it again. For the
Yeah.
third time, this case was re-raffled. And at that time, I was like, oh my God, I don't think we're ever going to get this thing. So we were raffled off to another judge. And this time, talagang this shows you how God moves. So my lawyer was was Attorney Salombides. He had a junior lawyer. His junior lawyer, BJ De Los Santos, turns out was the son of one of my
Dear friends and rep.
friends in rep.
Yeah.
I saw him as a kid, and then hindi ko na siya nakita. And then one day at the lawyer's office, he reintroduced himself and says, "Tito, you don't remember me. I'm Terry Legarda's son." And I said, "Oh my gosh!" It was such a poetic thing that a child from the past is now the lawyer who took care of our third bat at that court. So BJ and I really worked hard. We would see the DSWD. We would bring the DSWD to my house. So
Yeah,
they could
they
see
were
the
trying to
setup.
they were trying to push it because they sat on it for a while, no?
Right. So finally, when nagka-hearing na, naalala ko, BJ and I were there. Hindi namin dinala si Richard. And then I remember the lawyer said, talking to the DSWD, "Ano ba naman yan? Hanggang ngayon, di pa rin kayo tapos sa report nyo. Tapusin nyo na, kawawa naman si Mr. Gemora." So I knew she was sympathetic to me. But we went through the motion and then the decision was going to be passed. I got a friend request from a judge in Makati. He's Christian. He loves to sing. It was so random. So I get a friend request, right? So I accept the friend request and then we started chatting. He says, "I'm a judge in Makati." "Oh." Sabi ko, "I have a case there." Sabi niya, "Oh, really? What's your case?" Sabi, "It's an adoption." Sabi ko, "It's been sitting there for so long. Who's the name of your judge?" "Oh, I mentioned the judge." "Just a minute." Nawala siya for a few. Maya-maya. "Oh, I know her. Just pray." So, what the hell does that mean? Just pray.
Just free.
you know? And then months pass. Walang nangyayari. And then, finally, I got another message from him. Sabi niya, "Odds, malapit ang decision. Just pray." Do you remember we were in the
Yeah.
kitchen?
This was 2 months before my birthday,
18?
18th birthday.
Talk about photo finish. We're in the kitchen and there's an envelope and it's from Makati
Yeah.
court. And so I hurriedly opened it up. I skimmed through, went to the end, the decision granted. So we just hugged each other.
Yeah. And at the time I didn't think it had any effect because in my heart you're my dad, and I didn't think that any legal or any name changes were going to affect that or were going to make it any different. But I never told you this, but there was a confidence, or there was a validation that came with the adoption being official. There was a validation with us having the same name. And I feel like that's why father and son or father and child relationships are so important, because the role of the father is affirmation. That's where you get your identity. This paints a story clear as day, because I quite literally took an identity that you gave me. You gave me a name. I am confident in the fact that I am your son legally. I don't know. I can't say that we were any closer then after that, because we were already close, but it just felt solid. It felt real. It felt there was no longer room for any insecurity, because obviously you grow up as a kid, you wonder, oh, Audie Gemora is your dad, but you see it's a different last name, or why do you guys not look alike, or whatever.
We may not look alike, but at one point he took play shop, trumpets play shop, workshop, and the role that he got was Aslan, the role that I played in the musical The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah.
Up until this point, never heard him sing. And then there's on stage, opens his mouth, and this voice comes out. And everybody in that audience turns to me and says, "Oh my God, he's got your voice. What happened there?" And like, I mean,
That's a funny touch. My God, no, that's yeah.
he's got my voice. He's got my voice. God throws in those little
Yeah, throws
things.
in those little nuggets of
Yeah, yeah.
validation.
It's been great.
Yeah.
To me, it's been life changing for me. Prior to my Richard coming into my life, I really had no direction. I was successful, but I really had no direction. Becoming a father was very life changing. It really, really changed my life. People don't understand why we're so close. Because he became kind of like the center. It gave me direction. Maybe in the next episode, when we start talk about the dynamic between father and son, you'll understand. We'll be able to make him mine more. This is my favorite. Can I just show this cup? this cup I found somewhere, and it says here, any man can be a father, biologically speaking, but it takes someone special to be a dad. I'm not saying I'm special. I'm just saying that it takes a special kind of commitment to become a dad. It's relational. It's a commitment,
Yeah,
and
it's effort. Clearly, it goes beyond just blood relations.
it's purpose.
Purpose.
It's purpose, and it's meaning. And I never ever would have ever thought that fatherhood could give me purpose and meaning. It has.
And for a son, I can say maybe more pronounced for me because of our situation, but it gives me identity, or at least a foundation for an identity. I know that I'm Shello's son. Shello's my mom, and I'm Audie's son. Well, Audie's my dad, and that sets the base for, and that to follow na lang anything else that builds on that. But it sets a clear and strong foundation whenever I get lost, and to see, like, in that journey of finding who I am, I always have that to fall back on.
Tsaka walang pagkakaiba. You guys might think, kung hindi mo dugo, can you really love somebody like your own? And I will tell you now, yes, you really can. And if you look at the Bible, we are adopted. If you are a follower of Christ, then you become he's the firstborn. He's the first offspring. We become an offspring of God as a result of that. So adoption is really God's way of loving us.
It played a big role also. I mean, just to add, and how I viewed Christianity and relationship with God, and because I struggled with it until maybe I was like 18 roundabouts. And that's when it became real to me, because I saw the perfect parallel to someone who has nothing to do with you, not blood related or anything like that, but can love you with such purity and with such unconditional love. I'm like, why do I have to look elsewhere? I see that in my life, like right now. And so it was, that's what helped heal, I guess, or understand that relationship with God.
Yeah. So that's our adoption story.
Yeah.
That's how we became father and son. And
We don't really, have a key message or anything, but the whole point was to just spark the conversation. I feel like men in general should talk more. We should talk more about father and son dynamics, because it's such an important relationship, and I feel like it's more rare than it is common, unfortunately. Yeah.
But I hope you guys were blessed by our story. There's so many kids out there who need love. So many of us there who are loveless. So why don't you just move towards people and be that? A lot of brokenness in the world can be made whole by people reaching out and completing each other.
Guys, thanks so much for listening to the Soul podcast. That was a fun episode, no, Dad? You enjoyed that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marami kang mga little kwentos. I know we're just pressed for time but ang
I
dami
know.
mga cute kwentos about him growing up. I would have loved
And
to
those
share.
cuentos will come out next Thursday. So we'll catch you then.